All right. Good morning, guys. This is actually Saturday. I'm trying to get the videos all finished for the upcoming week. I want to apologize for the confusion of how to find the videos. I am doing better with labeling those. You guys are my last class. I've already done Number of the Stars. I've already done The Giver. And with the labeling of those, I'm doing them a little different this week. So it's going to be tons easier to find them. So when you guys go to my YouTube channel, Kim Dunn, and you look under Hatchet, they're going to be listed as like Kim Dunn Hatchet Day 6 Stay at Home Work, Kim Dunn Hatchet Day 7 Stay at Home Work, and the numbers will go from there. Day 6 will be your Monday, which is where you are. The cat jumped up here and scared me half to death. So your day 6 is going to be Monday. So you will start right there. Day 7 will be your Tuesday. I think some of your parents who've been trying to help you all with your work they've been a little confused with the Team Talk packets. I've talked with some of them about how each day is taking us 2 days to get through. This program or reading program that we use is normally done in a 90-minute block. If you have 90 minutes, you can get through it in a day. It's hard, but you can do it. I've done it. But in class, we roughly have about 50 minutes by the time you do transitions and get settled. So it takes us 2 days, and that's why we are blocking it still in that 2-day setting. And by the time you add Team Talk in, you have partner share, you have live scoring. It takes a full 50 minutes to get through one day. So to get through half a day, excuse me. So for some of you parents who are watching these videos with your kids, thank you. But just trying to clear up why it seems to be going at such a slow pace. In a regular school setting, we can get to a test day about every 8 actual school days. And so we're still kind of going on that cycle. I threw in the summary on Friday because our students, and you guys know this, you are still struggling with that summing things up. I have looked at a couple of those. I've kicked 1 or 2 of those back because your details are not in chronological order. So when we're thinking about a summary, and we're thinking about that story arc and how those details go with that rising action, you want to make sure that your summary as a whole is making sense and it's not kind of jumping everywhere. Ooh, I like how that looks. It's like kind of close. And so when we are looking at summaries and I'm reading those, don't be surprised if yours might come back to you to put that in chronological order, because that's really one of the things I'm looking for. All right, so kind of want to get the lesson started. Our end in mind is way back here and it's hard to see. So when I want to bring it up front, our end in mind is I will identify the causes and effects of the main character's actions and thoughts based on the setting, the situation, and his character traits. So we're really looking at those cause and effect relationships that are based on actions and thoughts, okay? We're going to be taking into consideration where he's located and what's going on in the story. That would be your situation. What is happening at that moment? So a situation for us for those Thursday questions that we're getting ready to check would be, the situation is he just dropped the hatchet. He dropped the hatchet in the middle of the lake. And so what is this cause and effect relationship that's about to take place here? So this is our end in mind. This is what we are trying to work towards understanding. And so we want to kind of keep that in mind. Now, our vocabulary, I'm going to have to probably sit down. I've got my stool kind of in our way. We have unduly, which is excessively. Intact is whole, and we talked about a whole pizza, nothing being taken out of it. It's intact. It's in its entirety. During all of this crazy stay-at-home time, you may have a big jigsaw puzzle that you're putting together, and there's nothing more infuriating than to get it together and it not be intact. To have a missing piece or to have 2 or 3 missing pieces will drive you batty. Incessant is constant. That's that, I think it's Family Guy. I think that's what it is. Mommy, mommy, hey mommy, 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 hey mommy, mommy, mommy. It's that constant, and you just want to go, please shut up. But as a mom, you look at them and you say, what, dear? What you need, sweetie? So incessant is that constant. And in this story, they talk about the mosquitoes having that incessant hum around his ears, the incessant attack on his body. We have refine, which is to improve. He's had to refine his camp a couple of times at this point, and so he's having to improve upon it. We have murky, which is cloudy. I took my husband for a Jeep drive yesterday. It was so nice. Keep in mind, this is Saturday for me, and remember last Friday how beautiful it was. So we took the T-top things out of the Jeep, and I took him for a drive down by Laurel Lake. And along the shoreline, that water is murky. It's cloudy because it's lapping up and it's dredging up some of that gunk there. We have frenzy, which is excited. If you've ever been to a rival basketball game or a rival football game, the home team, the home court, or the home field, your student section will be frenzied. They'll be excited. They'll be just like crazy, whether they'll come in theme outfits, signs, the shouting and the jeering. It's got that kind of like crazy vibe to it. Instinctive is spontaneous and unthinking. So we've talked about that a couple of times, about especially with parents. When you become a parent someday, it's almost like when you have children, there's certain things that you just do without thinking, whether it's a little one getting ready to reach and touch a hot stove. You don't think about it. You just kind of grab them back and pull them away. You're driving and the hand does the smack when you slam on the brake to kind of put in front of their chest. Rummaging is where we're searching for things. We don't know where it's at. We have a general idea, but we're just kind of going crazy trying to find it. So rummaging is that kind of thing. Now, I want us to take out our team talk. We are going to go over day 2 questions, and I'm going to go ahead and stand back up because I want to make sure my head's not cut off right here like I did in some of the videos last week. So trying to be conscious of that. Let's take a look at day 1. Isabella, this McDonald's tea is for you, just so you know. Parents, you won't get the reference. All day long at school, I stop every morning, get an unsweet tea from McDonald's, no ice. And then once I drink that gone, I drink tons of water all day long in that same kind of cup. So she noticed that last week. So shout out. All right, so let's look at number 1. I took some time and made sure that I have my evidence marked so that we can make sure that when we're checking over it, that everybody knows and has exactly what they need. So number 1 says, how does Brian feel about his surroundings? One of the most common mistakes that I saw when I was scoring these and kicking them back, because guys, you've had me now for 2 years. you know, page numbers are not enough. Textual evidence is a must. So a lot of you, I think, are kind of getting a little lazy because we're home, but we still have to have this skill moving forward. So we want to make sure that we are still practicing at home the same expectation as what there is at school. So how does Brian feel about his surroundings? Brian feels that his surroundings are extremely beautiful. And even if he's alone and struggling, he's thinking about just the immense beauty that's all around. And I have marked page 158, second and third paragraph. So I'd like you to go there. That's where I am, 158. And if I had a sticky note, I would sticky note this for my textual evidence, and you would also, so that when we got back getting ready for test day, you could easily flip to that in case it is a repeat question, because sometimes we have those. But Brian feels that his surroundings is extremely beautiful. And my evidence is on page 158, paragraph 2 specifically. There was great beauty here, almost unbelievable beauty. The sun exploded the sky, just blew it up with the setting color, and that color came down into the water of the lake. Amazing beauty. So in the third paragraph, it says, but even alone, it was beautiful. And so you could have tagged that in there also. Not necessarily. The gut of that answer and your evidence is in that paragraph too. So that would have sufficed. So make yourself a note real quick if you did not have all of that evidence in there. All right, let's look at number 2. What motivates Brian to continue trying to enter the plane when the thought of the pilot inside is upsetting to him? So my restate would be, the thing that motivates Brian to try to keep getting into the plane, even after he thinks about the pilot, is the survival pack. My evidence is on page 160, where it says, but the image of the survival pack kept him. If he could get it out of the plane, or if he could just get into it and pull something out, a candy bar, even that, just a candy bar, it would be worth it. But how to get at the inside of the plane? So when we're thinking about textual evidence, you can't just say page 160, which is what some of you all did. You just gave me one sentence. It's not enough. Even though we are not doing K-Prep testing this year, it's been canceled. This is a skill that you are going to be needing for next year, for 7th grade. You're going to have that same type of testing, that expectation of where did you get your evidence? And adding that evidence to your answer is still going to be there, guys. We can't get lazy now, or we're really going to suffer come next year. Number 7, how does Brian get into the plane? Now, my restate would be, the way that Brian gets into the plane is that he uses the hatchet. My evidence is on page 160, paragraph 2, I think. The hatchet cut through the aluminum as if it were soft cheese. 3 more hacks, and he had a triangle hole the size of his hand. And he could just see the 4 cables, and that he guessed were the control cables going back to the tail. So there would be my evidence. Now, I could have also included how he knew to use the hatchet. And that would have been on page 161. Once he got out to the plane, initially, it hit him like, holy crap, how and he takes his fist and he like whams against the side of the plane. And the body of the plane kind of gives in. It makes this indentation. And that's when he realizes that it's just a real thin covering over the actual skeleton part of the plane. And that's where the hatchet came in. So if you just talked about the thin covering, it's not enough. The way he got in was by realizing that the hatchet was going to be a keeper on this one. So he starts hacking away and he's peeling it back piece by piece by piece. That takes us in to question 4. How does dropping the hatchet affect Brian? That is our end in mind question. Identify the cause and effects of Brian's actions through a situation. So the effect is that he drops the hatchet. Okay? Now, when we think about that, no, said that backwards. Had to think about it. Because Brian drops the hatchet, it's the cause there. So he drops the hatchet. What is the effect of that? Okay? So the cause is he drops it. What is the effect that takes place? The effect of this is, and I'm watching this cat out of the corner of my eye because it scared the bejesus out of me a while ago. There you go, kitty cat. The effect is that he is angry with himself. He is so mad because he dropped this hatchet. This has been his lifeline through this whole book. All of the things that he's learned to do with this hatchet. He's built shelter with it. He has built tools. He's built weapons. Anything that he's made fire that you can imagine, this hatchet has been his go-to. So, how does dropping the hatchet affect Brian? By dropping the hatchet, he becomes very angry. And on page 162, here's my evidence. "Arg!" he yelled. "That was the kind of thing I would have done before. When I came here, I would have done that. Not now. Not now." Yet he had, and he hung on the raft for a moment and felt sorry for himself, for his own stupidity. But as before, the self-pity didn't help, and he knew what he had only one course of action. He had to get the hatchet back. So he was so unbelievably angry at the initial point, and then he felt sorry for himself for just a moment. And then he realized once again, because remember he had that whole self-pity meltdown where he actually tried to hurt himself, that he realized, you know what, this ain't helping nobody. You know, I just got to get it together. I got to get the hatchet back. So there was our end in mind question. Now what I'd like you to do is I'm going to kind of watch my timer. I'm going to give you about 1.5 minutes, and I want you to do your vocabulary practice, okay? Because we know that by looking at the vocabulary here, this is what it's going to look like on our test on Friday. Yes, the test is Friday. So take about 1.5 minutes, absolutely no more. And I'd like you to do those 4. You have about 45 seconds. Remember, right behind me is the vocabulary chart if you are struggling with meanings or definitions. All right, so let's take a look at number one. In the class, I would pull a stick, something called Random Reporter. The kids would answer, they would get a block for a point, or they would get candy for correct responses. So here we go. Number one, the principal waited for the blank talking to stop before announcing the winner. So the principal was waiting for the incessant talking to stop. So remember, incessant is constant. That is a teacher technique that we do when people are talking. We'll just stand and be quiet, hoping that they get the silent cue, or we'll do the hand raise. So number one was incessant. Number two, the raccoon was blank through the trash can looking for food. Rummaging. He was rummaging through the trash. Number three, Tanya wanted to blank her locket, so she added a small mirror and picture of her dog. The answer is refine. I think that's an odd sentence for me to use refine with, but she's changing it up. So she's trying to add something to it that would make it, in her opinion, better. And number four, because of Oscar's blank love for music, he played 3 instruments. The answer to that is instinctive. Instinctive. All right, now, so if you want to go ahead and flip that Team Talk to day 3, just to have it kind of done and laying there, that'd be great. And I want us to pick up our book, and we're going to go to page 163. 163. I just have to see where I need to stop reading, because y'all know I can get on a rant and just keep on going. All right, so I'm going to have a seat and get comfortable. I'd like you all to do the same, and let's get started. I'm going to actually start at the top of 163. We've already read that on Thursday, but I don't think it'll kill us to reread that paragraph. So here we go. Yet he had, and he hung on the raft for a moment and felt sorry for himself, for his own stupidity. But as before, the self-pity didn't help. And he knew that he had only one course of action. He had to get the hatchet back. He had to dive and get it back. But how deep was it? In the deep end of the gym pool at school, he had no trouble getting to the bottom. And that was, he was pretty sure, about 11 feet. So let's think about the depth of a swimming pool. My good friend has a pool and with a diving board, and it is, I want to think, either 10 feet or 12 feet. Might be 12. So think about the local pools that you might have gone to, whether it's, I live in the city of Corbin, so whether it's the Corbin pool or over at the Stivers Center, I'm not sure what it's called, or at the Aquatic Center in Barberville, when, you know, can you get to the bottom of that pool? So that's kind of what Brian is thinking about right now, depth, and trying to get real perspective on depth. And so he's thinking, okay, I know I can do at least 11 feet. So here we go. Here it was impossible to know the exact depth. The front end of the plane, anchored by the weight of the engine, was obviously on the bottom, but it came back up at an angle, so the water wasn't as deep as the plane was long. He pulled himself out of the water so his chest could expand, and he took 2 deep breaths and swiveled and dove, pulling his arms, and kicking off the raft bottom with his feet. His first thrust took him down a good 8 feet, but the visibility was only 5 feet beyond that, and he could not see the bottom yet. He clawed down 6 or 7 feet, the pressure pushing in his ears until he held his nose and popped them. And just as he ran out of breath and headed back up, he thought he saw the bottom, still 4 feet below his dive. He exploded out of the surface, bumping his head on the side of the elevator when he came up, and took air like a whale, pushing the stale air out until he wheezed, taking new in. He wouldn't have to get deeper yet and still have time to search while he was down there. Stupid, he thought once more, cursing himself, just dumb. Well, he pulled air again and again, pushing his chest out until he could not possibly get any more capacity, and then took one more deep lungful and wheeled and dove again. This time he made an arrow out of his arms and used his legs to push off the bottom of the raft. All he had in his legs to spring, snap, and propel him down. As soon as he felt himself slowing a bit, he started raking back with his arms at his sides like paddles and thrusting with his legs like a frog. And this time he was so successful that he ran his face into the bottom mud. Well, he shook his head to clear his eyes and looked around. The plane disappeared out and down in front of him, and he thought he could see the windows, and that made him think again of the pilot sitting inside, and he forced his thoughts from it. But he could see no hatchet. Bad air triggers were starting to go off in his brain, and he knew he was limited to seconds now. But he held for a moment and tried moving out a bit, and just as he ran out of air, knew that he was going to have to blow soon. And he saw the handle sticking out of the mud, and he made one grab and he missed, and reached again and felt his fingers close on the rubber. He clutched it and in one motion slammed his feet down into the mud and powered himself up. But now his lungs were ready to explode, and he had flashes of color in his brain, explosions of color, and he would have to take a pool of water, take it into his lungs, and just as he opened his mouth to take it in, to pull in all the water in the lake, his head blew out of the surface and into the light. Twop! It was as if a balloon had exploded. Old air blew out of his nose and mouth, and he pulled new in again and again. And he reached for the side of the raft and hung there, just breathing, until he could think once more. The hatchet, it clutched and shining in his right hand. All right, the plane, still the plane. And he went back to the hole in the fuselage and began to chop and cut away, peeling the aluminum skin off in pieces. It was slow going because he was careful, very careful with the hatchet, but he hacked and pulled until he had opened a hole large enough to pull his head and shoulders in and look down into the water. It was very dark inside the fuselage, and he could see nothing, certainly no sign of the survival pack. There were some small pieces and bits of paper floating on the surface inside the plane, dirt from the floor of the plane that had floated up, but nothing substantial. Well, he thought, did you expect it to be easy? So easy that way? Just open her up and get the pack? Right. He would have to open it more, much more, so he could poke down inside and see what he could find. The survival pack had been a zippered nylon bag, or perhaps canvas of some kind, and he thought it had been red, or was it gray? Well, that didn't matter. It must have been moved when the plane crashed, and it might be jammed down under something. He started chopping again, cutting the aluminum away in small triangles, putting each one on the raft as he chopped. He could never throw anything away again, he thought, because they might be useful later, bits of metal, fish, arrowheads, or lures, maybe. And when he finally finished again, he had cleaned away the whole side and top of the fuselage that stuck out of the water, had cut down into the water as far as he could reach, and had a hole almost as big as he was, except that it was crossed and crisscrossed with aluminum, or it might be steel, he couldn't tell, braces and formers and cables. It was an awful tangled mess. But after chopping some braces away, there was room for him to wiggle through and get inside. So I kind of want us to think about Brian and his whole wilderness experience, and what is the effect that it has had on him at this point. So let's think about the cause. The cause is he is stranded in this Canadian wilderness with very little resources. What is the effect on him based on the reading? Feel free to go back up and look. In that big long paragraph I just finished, it says, and this is the effect that being stuck in this wilderness, this setting, we want to remember that end in mind is the main character's actions and thoughts based on setting and situation. So since he's in this setting, it says he could never throw anything away again, he thought, because they might be useful later. Bits of metal, fish arrowheads, or lures, maybe. So he's saving these pieces of metal as he's peeling them off. He can't just say, I don't need that, and give it a toss. He's thinking about, the possible usages that he might have for that later. It's a really important piece there. And so kind of want you to tuck that little nugget back in your head somewhere. I want you to take a moment. We're going to break our questions down. I'm going to read them just for speed on this piece. Okay. It says, how does Brian's fear that the plane will shift and trap him inside affect him? So the cause is that he's afraid the plane will shift. How does that affect him? 2, why is it difficult to get the survival pack out of the plane? Spoiler alert, okay, he finds it. Now he's got to figure out how is he going to wrestle it out. 3, how does Brian get the survival pack back to the shelter? 2 totally different questions. 2 and 3. Every year I have students who do not break those questions down carefully, and I end up with the same evidence for 2 and 3. That is not the case. They are 2 very distinctly different questions. And 4, how is the retrieval of the survival pack an example of the theme of perseverance? Oh, I love that. That question spirals back to week 1, where we talked about perseverance as the theme of our book. And we said that perseverance is never giving up. And so I want you to draw like a line up from perseverance, adding that particular definition. Never giving up when things get hard. Do that for me, please. All right, we're going to start at the middle of 166. Here we go. He held back for a moment, uncomfortable with the thought of getting inside the plane. What if the tail settled back to the bottom and he got caught and couldn't get out? It was a horrible thought. But then he reconsidered. The thing had been up now for 2 days, plus a bit, and he had been hammering and climbing on it, and it hadn't gone back down. It seemed pretty solid. He eeled in through the cables and formers, wiggling and pulling until he was inside the tail with his head clear of the surface of the water and his legs down on the angled floor. When he was ready, he took a deep breath and pushed down along the floor with his legs, feeling for some kind of fabric or cloth, anything with his bare feet. He touched nothing but the floor plates. Up, a new breath, then he reached down to formers underwater and pulled himself beneath the water, his legs pushing down and down almost to the backs of the front seats. And finally, on the left side of the plane, he thought he felt his foot hit cloth or canvas. Up for more air, deep breathing, then one more grab at the formers and pushing as hard as he could. He jammed his feet down and he hit it again. Definitely canvas or heavy nylon, and this time, when he pushed his foot, he thought he felt something inside it, something hard. It had to be the bag. Driven forward by the crash, it was jammed into the backs of the seats and caught on something. He tried to reach for it and pull, but didn't have the air left and went up for more. Lungs filled in great gulps, he shot down again, pulling on the formers until he was almost there. Then, wheeling down head first, he grabbed at the cloth. It was the survival bag. He pulled and tore at it to loosen it, and just as it broke free and his heart leapt to feel it rise, he looked up above the bag. In the light coming through the side windows, the pale green light from the water, he saw the pilot's head, only it wasn't a pilot's head any longer. The fish. He'd never really thought of it, but the fish. The fish he had been eating all this time had to eat too. They had been at the pilot all this time. Almost 2 months, nibbling and chewing, and all that remained was the not quite clean skull. And when he looked up, it wobbled loosely. Too much, too much. His mind screamed in horror, and he slammed back and was sick in the water, sick so that he choked on it and tried to breathe water, and could have ended there, ended with the pilot where it almost ended when they first arrived, except that his legs jerked. It was instinctive, fear more than anything else, fear of what he had seen. But they jerked and pushed, and he was headed up when they jerked, and he shot to the surface, still inside the birdcage of formers and cables. And his head slammed into a bracket as he cleared, and he reached up to grab it and was free in the air, hanging up in the tail. He hung that way for several minutes, choking and heaving and gasping for air, fighting to clear the picture of the pilot from his mind. It went slowly. He knew it would never completely leave, but he looked to the shore, and there were trees and birds, and the sun was getting low and golden over his shelter. And when he stopped coughing, he could hear the gentle sounds of evening, the peace sounds, the bird sounds, and the breeze in the trees. I want you to see if there's notes you can add to your team talk rather quickly. I'm going to do the same. right, so we have been at this roughly 40 minutes. So this is a good place for us to stop. So for your homework tonight, we only found evidence for question 1. So I want you to do question 1 in your journal. And I want you to go ahead and I'm making myself a note here. You're going to answer the vocabulary. Okay, so we know that we've got that part done. And then we will check those on day 8. So tomorrow we'll finish the reading. And then we will assign questions to upload. So that's it for our lesson today, guys. Enjoy. I'll be back in a moment.